right, it's deciding time. Welcome to the GamesBeat Decides podcast, your weekly source for guys taking video games way too seriously. I'm your host, Jeffrey Grubb. This is going to be kind of another not typical episode. I know we just got off of Game of the Year, but I'm going to be having a kid soon, so we're going to do some mini episodes. Me and Mike are going to record a couple back to back, post them up over the next couple of weeks. And with me, of course, is Mike. Say hi.
Hi, I am not going to be having a kid soon, but I do like to play with this thing.
That you know of. Yeah, how do you like that headset? I sent that to you.
By the way, for people listening to the audio, by this thing I do not mean anything dirty. I meant the little
he means his
speaker
penis
on my headset, yes. This is pretty nice.
Yeah, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the best looking consoles of all time. We'll get to that pretty soon, but I want to thank you all for joining us. Of course, you can always get more of us at GamesBeat.com. Email the podcast at games+podcast@VentureBeat.com. That's the plus sign. If you like what you're listening to, subscribe. You can get us on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or the deep web. The deep web, Michael.
What's the deep web?
It's the one you need like Tor, and it's like where all the illegal stuff is.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
If you're trying to buy acid online, you got to go on the deep web. And then, of course, while you're on iTunes or the deep web, leave us a 5-star review. It helps people find us. Yeah, Mike, so these are going to be some short episodes. We can jump right into it if you want, or do you have anything you want to talk about? It's a new year. It's 2017. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I thought it was still 2014. Man, there was we all know the Sonic the Hedgehog official Twitter account's amazing, right? But Mega Man had a pretty good one on New Year where it was like, he was like, it takes me so hard to get used to this. And it was like on January 2nd or something. He's like writing down the date, and he scratched out 20XX and like wrote down 20XX like over it.
All right,
that amused me.
That's pretty good stuff. I like that.
Yeah. But no, so I mean, the thing that kind of got me thinking about this was that I did actually get a PlayStation 4 Pro around Christmas time, so. Which is funny because we did a podcast on is that worth it, and I said no, and now I have one. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, if you're serious about gaming and you're gonna be playing PlayStation 4 games for the next couple of years, I don't think it's a bad investment. It's definitely an upgrade.
The interesting thing is that I was playing so few console games at that time because I was playing so much Warcraft and Overwatch and stuff like that, and I honestly probably still could do that. But like right now, I have this kind of nice backlog of PlayStation 4 games. What
are you playing? You playing like Last Guardian, things like that?
Well, I got Last Guardian to do. I just got the new Ratchet and Clank, which like that is the game that
on a Pro.
Nice.
That game looks incredible on a Pro.
Right, and yesterday I got a new 4K TV and like throwing that thing on there.
What'd you get? What TV did you get?
I got a Sony the X800 or was it X50? I forget. It was the 55-inch one.
Okay, and does it do HDR?
Yeah, it's HDR,
okay,
4K,
perfect.
All that jazz. I got an open box item that wasn't actually opened by somebody's return in store, so I got a pretty nice deal on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but even like I'm still playing Final Fantasy 15 even, and I'm actually reviewing Gravity Rush 2. So, I think I was allowed to say that. Who knows what these NDAs
it's not going to matter. Whatever.
No one can. But yeah, so I have a lot of PlayStation 4 games to play, which is so. It's pretty nice to have this thing. But as much as I like it, like when I was kind of replacing my shelf space, like with the old PlayStation 4, I'm like, PlayStation 4 is a better looking system, right? I don't mean like graphically. I mean like the case, the physical system. It's just kind of a nicer looking thing. It was. Everybody said that when it came out, right? Because it was real sleek and kind of small, like in a good way. What, are you like digging for your PlayStation 4 right now?
Yeah, I got the Pro. Here's the Pro. Yeah.
See, the Pro, I mean, it's not like horrible, but something about it it's really big. It just kind of.
I mean, it looks like a couple of PlayStation 4s smushed together, which almost ruins that sleekness that you're talking about.
Right. Like it still is. It has that angular thing that I like, but it just doesn't work quite as well.
Oh my God, I'm just destroying everything up here. Okay. But yeah, so like that made you think of what are the best looking consoles of all time. And that is going to be our topic today. We're going to rank the top 5 best looking consoles. And I don't think PlayStation 4 Pro is going to make that cut.
I think PlayStation 4 Pro is going to make the cut. Here's one question I kind of want to lead off with. Does any Microsoft system make that cut?
Xbox One S, I think, is a very good looking system.
Because I don't have a One S yet. But see, I think, and I've seen it. It looks all right, but it kind of suffers from that problem that a lot of these modern systems do now, where they're all kind of black boxes.
Well, this one's the white one. I mean,
it is white.
It is a box. I think it's very striking. I mean, I think this current generation, I think it's easily the best looking one, even better than the PS4.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but if you, I mean, I don't know, if you want to take another look at it, if you don't feel strongly about it, I don't necessarily think it's going to make the cut either. But I do think it's the best looking Microsoft console by far, without a doubt.
Well, that's easy.
My
point was that there wasn't a whole lot of competition there necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks it looks better than the original. I like the really like solid black line for the disc tray. Mm-hmm. That's actually another thing that drives me crazy about the PlayStation 4.
Oh yeah.
Pro is like it's hiding the disc tray.
It's not just hiding the disc tray; it's hiding like the buttons. Like I don't know which one is the power and which one is eject, and I'm like feeling on these ridges for forever, and you have to like bring in like your phone's flashlight to like see anything.
I am glad these systems like actually have buttons again.
Right. See, the original PS4 had the capacitive buttons that were a nightmare.
That was annoying.
Yes, I hated that.
The original Xbox One is such an ugly system. It's huge.
It's a VCR.
It has that awful. Yeah, it's a VCR. It has that awful button that like you get too close to it and your system turns on, which turns the TV on or off. And it's, oh my god. Look, I kind of maybe we can kind of go further back. I'm kind of a fan of back when consoles looked a bit more like toys, I guess you can say, right? Like that stuff. Like I'm like one of those people who liked the GameCube, for instance, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will.
I'm sure. But so maybe we can kind of start chronologically. What's like the latest you wanted to go back here?
I mean, let's go back to like 8-bit, because I don't think there's anything before 8-bit that we want to talk about. Like, do you have any? We don't want strong
that would finish on like the television,
like
or whatever.
That's definitely worth noting. But we just did, and that's kind of all you have to do. Is like wood paneling on consoles was cool. I kind of hope they would bring it back, but that's it. I still don't think they're like a top 5 best looking console of all time.
I think me and you are kind of in the same page, and I know some people disagree, but whenever we think of history of gaming, like in general, everything before the NES is kind of a footnote.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
which, fair or unfair, but that's just kind of how
that's the way I
feel.
Grew up. Yes,
yeah.
So
we can start with the NES, which it's always so hard to judge the NES on things sometimes because it's just like such the classic, right?
Right. Yeah, it kind of stands on its own. Like you don't have to like. I think we're very kind to it in retrospect. I mean, it had great games. It was fun, but like it was like kind of busted. Games would like stop working. You have to blow on them, and we forgive a lot of that just because it was our childhood, and that was just part of it. We just accepted that stuff. And I think the design of the original one, that front loader with the opening of the tray, and pushing everything in, it's iconic. But I don't know how much I feel like aesthetically it looks great beyond the fact that I feel very nostalgic about it.
It's again, it is hard to say because there is so much nostalgia there. But like getting the NES Mini, right? Kind of just looking at that thing, like I think it is an attractive system. I like that it has just enough angles where it's not a box, right? Like it kind of like comes down, angles downward into itself a little bit.
That it's like almost like a curve, like a polygonal curve there at the bottom.
And I kind of like how there's this constant like design motif of all these ridges in it, right? Like on the top, there's those ridges on that black line for whatever reason. Even the controller, like it has like a bunch of those like gray lines that kind of replicate that ridges thing. So like there were things happening there, right? Like it wasn't just a box.
And I like the color scheme too. I like the gray and black actually.
Right.
I mean, clearly that was a color scheme that a lot of consumer electronics went with back in that time. But I still think that this one sticks out with the nice gray and the black kind of.
It kind of reminds me of like those old cartoons, right, where you only had gray, black, and then like red would be the one other color because you have that little red accent there sometimes, and like the red just pops out at you so much, like just the Nintendo logo on the system or the red buttons.
And I think that's one of the things that makes me always want a red LED power button on all my electronics. That lets me know what's on, what's off. Is that little red, blaring outside of that dull gray and the deep black. So yeah, I definitely feel that. I think we can leave it on the list for now. And I doubt anything will push it completely off, but I don't know if it's going to be near the top either.
Yeah, we'll see. And I mean, there's like a couple other things. Like we could talk about NES and Famicom. I think the NES looks better than the Famicom.
I agree. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but I mean I don't like the way the controllers dock on the system on the Famicom. Yeah, but what about the NES the top loader?
It doesn't have nearly as much personality.
Right.
It's a lot of those
looks more like a
smaller
toy.
consoles are more like they're made more for function, right?
Yes.
So we kind of go into the Genesis, and we could talk about that. I don't think if I think we could just talk about the first model, because Model 2, Model 3 just aren't nearly as interesting looking. And it's funny because the Genesis, it almost looks more like when you look at like its design, it almost looks more like a successor to the NES than even the Super NES design wise, right? Like you have those ridges, you have like that, instead of gray, it's just black, but you still have like the red accent as kind of like that's secondary or third color there.
I like the way that and I think this is the right Genesis, where the buttons kind of like hovered above and you kind of slid them up. Is that how that worked? Like the power button and the reset button on the Genesis?
Yes, it was very, you would slide it to like left or right, and there was, it was an interesting system. Yeah, looking at this thing now, like it has like almost those NES ridges on it.
Yeah.
But it had a lot of cool curves, and I think my favorite feature was like the cartridge slot was like kind of circular, and it kind of stuck up a little bit in a really interesting way. The look, and this is, obviously the logos aren't, I guess that could almost be a whole other thing, but the logos are on the system.
Yeah,
I love that Sega Genesis logo.
Yeah, we're saying best looking, and I think anytime you're like looking at the system and you notice something about it, I think that counts for this category. So
it's just, it's kind of a classic system, and it still kind of has that, looks like a toy, but in a lot of ways, ahead of its time, like in terms of like the sleekness.
At that time, no console sat better in an entertainment center alongside like expensive stereo equipment than the Genesis, I think. So do you want to go ahead and type it in there underneath NES? If you are you in the dock?
Yeah, sure.
Let's just get in there. We'll rank them here in a bit.
So Genesis 1.
Yeah. Yes. So what about the Super Nintendo?
That's interesting because,
I'll say that I like the color scheme again. I do like the gray and the purple.
I love the purple.
Yes. That's like the best thing about it, I think, is the color scheme. Whenever like there's a peripheral now that uses that color scheme on purpose to like allude to the Super Nintendo, I'm very excited. But beyond that, it was I think it was busy. There was like a lot of ridges on the bottom. I'm like doing a lot of this from memory. I should actually just bring up pictures, but I just don't know if it was iconic as the NES or the Genesis.
Not like if you had the silhouette of it, I don't know if you would immediately recognize it as an SNES. I think one of the cool things is, again, the power and reset button, the way they kind of slide up and down, and how there's kind of like they kind of stick up a little bit. There is like a ridge to it. Like I like how the top isn't just flat. There's a lot of kind of things going on there, but it's not quite as iconic. It's definitely below the other two right now, if it makes it at all.
Yeah, it looks like it was trying to be more futuristic, and yet like it was trying to justify why you would need a new Nintendo. Like everyone had a Nintendo, so why do I need a Super Nintendo? It looked like it was trying to be like, no, this is the future. Like trying too hard a little bit almost. I still like the way it looks, but it's I don't like it as much as the NES for sure. So let's at this point though, let's any handhelds from this kind of era that you would throw on there. I don't know if the Game Boy is a huge toaster. It's an ugly thing, but I think
it's ugly.
But it's ugly in a really interesting way.
But we love it for being ugly. But let's be honest, it's kind of ugly. Yeah,
honestly, and this might be jumping forward a little bit. The handheld that I think I would be most excited to put on there is the Game Boy Advance SP.
I was just thinking that's like the only one that, from a design way, kind of really strikes me as being super interesting.
Yeah, I like the way it looked, and almost in any color too. Like it came in like purple, I think, early on, and but then they had black and white and orange and all these other ones. But no matter what, I just thought it was very sleek looking. The way it collapsed was very clean. Like the lines all matched up really nicely. It didn't look loose or not thought through very well. So I think it's probably one that we can at least put among these other systems, and then that might be the only handheld. Do you think of any others? I mean, I like the Game Boy Color. But
no, not really, because a lot of them are they're fine. They're designed to be functional and kind of fit everything in there.
Right?
Like,
yeah,
like the Vita
exactly.
and the PSP, like they're fine, but whatever.
Yeah, and no DS or 3DS. I think I'd put on there.
No, how about the DS Fat? Right? No.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, if we're doing the ugliest console.
But like even like once they had the DS Lite, they pretty much all just kind of look like that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean the DS Lite was easily the best one out of all of those. But again, that was sort of referencing back to the Game Boy Advance SP almost. So I would still give it to the GBA SP. Let's see.
So if we're kind of going chronologically, I guess we can look at the Saturn real quick.
Yes.
Which is kind of one of the first just like big black boxes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little concave where the disc tray is, but really nothing special. Kind of a boring looking system.
Yeah. I of those, the Saturn was definitely, yeah, I like, it's not memorable at all. You're right. It's just a black box. Now on the opposite end of that spectrum, the N64 went very wild with its design almost, with the curves, the big, the front paws on the front and stuff like that. But I don't know if I ever really loved that design ever, even at the time.
There was something cheap feeling about it, wasn't there?
Yes, absolutely. Like, I mean, I don't want to keep going back to it looks like a toy thing, because it didn't look like a toy. It just looked like a concept design that never fully came together. Like, it was just something that they threw together in their garage and then decided not to change it.
Right, yeah. It just seems, I don't know, like something, like I like those little kind of, almost looks like stands, those little things in the front, on those two front corners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like the way it was like supposed to like dock with the 64DD peripheral. I was always excited about like, putting my N64 on top of that thing and having this huge stack. But that never happened. And standing alone, the N64, I don't know, it just didn't look right.
Well, it's like it has that wave that doesn't really seem to serve a purpose. The logo just kind of seems like it was put on there with a sticker on the front. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of it. I don't know. No. And at this point, the gray and white color scheme just seems really kind of muted. Like you don't have that solid accent color, right? Like you have that N, that the Nintendo 64 N, but that has like a bunch of colors on it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it doesn't do anything for me.
And then the PS1.
It's probably the best of the kind of an ugly generation.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the big round buttons. I like the big round tray for the CD on top.
I like that. I like the circle motifs in general.
Yeah. I think that looks good. And I think you're right. It's the best of these. Do we think it's going to play on this list?
We can at least put it.
Okay. Yeah.
So here's my question. Is it better looking than the SNES? Maybe?
I think maybe. Yeah, I actually was going to say yes. Almost
close,
for sure.
But I think it is.
Yeah.
I give, it's lucky that it's a gray box, because it's still just like one color, but at least it's like gray and not a whole ton of people went for gray at this point.
Yeah, there was black. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, next generation?
We're going to go straight to PlayStation 2 here. I like the PlayStation 2. I
think the PlayStation 2 is probably the best looking PlayStation up until the 4. Yeah. I think it's I like the color. I really like the font. I like the blue accents.
I really like that logo, actually.
Yeah, that logo. It was like the blue line logo, right?
Yeah. I mean, some things just make me think future. If you have something that looks kind of like Tron, like that, it's just like, oh yeah, this looks kind of interesting. And
it's like a color that like always feels futuristic. That blue, and it's one that like no one really used in these designs of consoles before. And I never really understood that. And Sony jumped on it and kind of claimed it as their own, and kind of really did own it with the PS2.
And it was one of the few systems that, like, really looked good, whether it was on its side or just sitting down like normal, right? It kind of worked either way.
Yeah, and I think you could almost like if you had it standing up vertically for a long time, you could turn it on its side, and you could appreciate it again like anew, because it just didn't look like, oh, now it's on its side. It's like, oh, I can appreciate the different angles from this perspective now.
And kind of like going through this chronologically, it's really interesting, like how hard the angles are here, right? Like, there's been a lot of soft edges up to this point. Even the PlayStation 1, right? We talk about all those circles and everything. This is like square, ridge. Yeah. Like,
not afraid to have those sharp edges.
Right. It's striking.
Yeah.
Like looking at this thing now, like I really like the PlayStation 2, man. I think this is a sexy looking system.
Yeah. So let's get it on there.
Let's get on there. I'm going to put it under PlayStation or Genesis for now, I mean.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good to me.
We'll see if we want to put it up, maybe.
Now, let's see. The original Xbox, we could just say, haha, and then drop it off. Like, I mean, I love how ugly that system is. Actually, at this point, it looks like a giant, huge brick. It's way more of a VCR than even the Xbox One. And then the giant green logo. It's hideous.
I will say it's hideous. I like what they were trying to do with that green color, but they executed poorly on it.
Yeah, right? and I like that lack of execution. It has character, but it's not. It has character because it's ugly. Like, it has to make up for it in other ways. So yeah, that's not going to make our list. Now the GameCube, however, I like that system a ton. Even
God, I love it.
that the purple was great, but even when they started coming out with the other color schemes, the burnt orange or whatever they called it, I love the way that looked.
Oh, spice orange.
Yes,
I was a big fan of spice
that
orange.
looks so cool. I love. Because if you're going to stand out and if you're not going to try to fit in the entertainment center, you have to go all the way. And I think Nintendo really did go all the way with that system. It felt like no, we're not going to sit next to your DVD player at that time and try to look like a DVD player. We are completely something different, and that's okay. And they owned it. I love the way that system.
It could have almost just been like a literal cube, but then you have that handle on it. There's like the way the controller port section kind of curves out just a little bit. The way the buttons are even like on the corners of like the disc tray,
and the way the gray controller ports like sit out from the front. I think there's a nice contrast there between the base system, the cube, and this interface port that looks really nice. And the top, the black circle where the disc goes in. The tray's bigger than that, but like the black circle to let you know, the GameCube has the GameCube logo on it, and you pop that open. It all just looked very different and very well designed for what it was. And then, I just think it stuck out in such an interesting way.
Yeah, God, I love that purple.
The purple especially was just like, okay, they're trying to be different. A lot of people hated it at the time, but a lot of people hate everything because it's when it's different. Right. And now I think it's like if you appreciate it then, you'll love it now at this point.
Right, like if you're like just having all your systems on a shelf right now, man, the GameCube looks nice on there.
Yeah, yes, it's one that you can just kind of have it sitting out and kind of out front prominently because it looks so interesting.
Yeah, throwing the GameCube out there.
Yeah. So where are we at? We're at the PlayStation 3 now.
PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii era. So which one do you want to talk about first? The George Foreman grill?
Yes, let's get that out of the way. That was an ugly system too. I hated that thing.
They tried I understand what they were going for with it. And the curve is almost not the big problem. Like I almost like that kind of has like that platinum sort of like lining around it. Like it looks high end.
The edge work was nice. Yes, it does.
High end until you stare at that Spider-Man logo.
Yeah, right? The Spider-Man font is
Man.
People that don't know, I guess, Sony was making Spider-Man movies. They made a font for the Spider-Man movies, like for the logo for those movies, and then they used that font for the PlayStation 3 logo and put it right on the side of the system. And I don't know, it's kind of it's like it's like gawky. Is that the word? It's I don't know. It just stands out in a way that I don't like at all.
You can't use such a logo that is so well known for like only one other thing.
Right, yeah. I mean,
it's like if the Star Wars logo was, the logo for the Switch, how weird would that be?
No, yeah, it would it makes you start thinking in ways you're like, what is this? Like, why isn't that the Spider-Man logo? And you can't appreciate the rest of the system. Not that there's a ton to appreciate in my opinion. And I think it looked too much like the George Foreman grill. You're like, you're right.
That was like one of the first memes I can remember. Was that picture of the George Foreman grill, PlayStation 3. I mean, it was just an object of ridicule.
Yeah. At least they didn't go with that one dual. Like this is off the subject, but the DualShock 3 controller that looked like a boomerang or a double-ended pleasure device. So. They weren't on top of their design game back then. They fixed it up, I think, with some revisions there, but we're not going to consider.
Yeah, like the Slim looks better, but it's not like whatever.
No, not great. What about the Xbox 360? At the time I really liked the inhale. So they made a big deal about how this system was inhaling and it kind of curved in, like it was convex or concave instead of like convex. And almost the opposite of the curve of the PlayStation 3. But I don't think it aged very well, that design.
No, it didn't. Yeah, it was not one you could put on your side. And when you put it on its side, it almost kind of just looked like a PC tower and almost not like in a fun way. Right? This is like almost, I don't know if this is fair, but every time I see that thing, like I almost like can't help but see a red ring of death flashing in my face.
Totally.
It's kind of just.
And I think the hard drive sticking out at the top, I think that looked kind of ugly.
Yeah, especially when I look at it now, I do not like that. Yeah,
I liked the white at the time as well, but I don't know, that plastic, the white plastic, you're always taking a risk of it aging really poorly and getting kind kind of a yellowish tint, and it wasn't as bad as some of like past consoles, like the original Super Nintendo would get really yellow over time. The Xbox 360 wasn't that bad, but it still kind of took on a yellow tint over time.
It got dirty surprisingly quickly.
Right, yeah. And that's one of the things, again, I remember about the system. It's not necessarily fair, but that's kind of what I remember.
I think that's why so many of these systems are just black now.
Yes, because it's just easier. And then the Wii. Let me look at this thing.
It's a tiny thing.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked its size. I liked the blue light again in the front. That was nice. I actually did really think that was cool.
It's funny because if you don't have it like standing in that weird stand that kind of like angles it in that way, there's almost nothing unique about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like otherwise it's literally just like a box of a blue slit in it.
And it's like I had it standing vertically for maybe the first couple of years, but then I don't know, I moved and threw out the stand or something and put it on its side. And that's what it was like for the last several years, like, frequently unused. So that's kind of how I remember it now. I mean, looking at pictures of it sitting in the stand with the blue light, I'm like, it is interesting. It is different.
It's probably the best of these three.
Yeah, it probably is. But
these are not. This is not a good group of attractive systems, right?
Yeah, none of them are like GameCube, like how they stuck out in that way, and none of them are PlayStation 2, kind of going for that premium looking edge. So I wouldn't include any of these. I don't think the Wii is the closest. You're right, but it's not going to make it.
No, and then I guess you could go right to the Wii U, which is almost worse.
Yeah,
it's like less interesting.
Right, it's like a Fisher Price toy as one of the big criticisms you always hear of it.
It was such a nondescript thing that they didn't even show the actual console when they announced the system. It was like an afterthought. Like, oh, here's the box where like the things go.
It looks like a jazz drive. You remember those like those like peripherals you plug into your PC to like get a 100 megabytes of storage or whatever. It looks like one of those. So not the Wii U for sure. So what about these? We kind of talked about them a little bit early on, but PS4, Xbox One,
PlayStation 4 is easily the best system like of the last two generations, right?
Yep, I think so.
I guess you like the S. I think I still like the original PlayStation 4 a bit more than the Xbox One S.
Yeah, and I think I'm okay with that. I think the Xbox One S, if it was going to make it onto here, it would probably be at like number 5. But we already have a ton of good stuff on here, and I don't think it's necessarily going to make the cut. And I do think the PlayStation 4 having the advantage of, in terms of like I think my consideration of coming out first and not having a revision. We didn't consider many revisions. I think I'd put the PS4 on there for sure.
All right, so we kind of have a list now. Let's see if we can get this to 5.
Yes. Let me.
Is there something you just like don't want on here?
Let me think. I think maybe we can cut the SNES. I know it's tough.
Yeah, let's cut the SNES.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get it off there.
It's not an ugly system, but.
No, but like I said, I just don't think it's not going to hang with the rest of these.
No, so we have 3 PlayStations on here.
Yeah, we don't need PlayStation 1.
No, I don't think so.
So then how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need to cut one more. Do we want to cut one of the other PlayStations or what?
Well, for me, honestly, it would either be the PlayStation 4 or the SP.
Man, I think the SP. Okay, let me think.
I might say SP. I don't know. SP is really interesting, but it's not so much the form of it that was really interesting to me, except as much as it was just kind of like the clamshell in general. Although I guess that's part of it. I don't know.
I lost your camera, but oh well. We can still hear you.
Yeah, no one needs to see my face.
Yeah. All right, let's. Okay. Yeah, let's get rid of it. That works for me. All right, where are we at? Okay.
Hey, look, I'm back.
Hey, hooray. Oh, no, never mind. Not hooray. I just saw your face again. I remembered what you look like.
Okay.
So, I think this list is not too far off. Well, no, the NES probably has to come down. What are you going to put at number 1? I think I might be with you if you're going to say GameCube.
Oh God, I'm such a GameCube fan, but man, I love that system. Like, if you like ask me what system I could have like a poster of hanging in my room, I would say GameCube.
Mike, mute your video. Mute yourself in the video.
Sorry, yeah.
No, yeah, it's okay. It's not that bad. It's just...
Yeah, I'm saying I would. If you asked me like which one I could have like a framed picture of in my room or something, it would probably be the GameCube. Yeah,
I think it's the most interesting, and it pulled it off in a really confident way. It's definitely Nintendo's best design. Let's move it up for now. I don't think anything else is going to overtake it. So
Okay. I think PlayStation 4 belongs at 5 if it's on the list.
Okay.
I think we can say that. So
I'm
we
okay
have
with
1
that.
and 5. We just
Yeah.
sandwich in the others.
Yeah, so that works. I think I'd move Genesis up. How about you? I think
I
Genesis
was
up to number
going
2.
to say the same thing.
Well, all right, this is
Genesis at
going
number
well.
2.
All right.
That's a cool looking system.
Yeah.
Kind of
And
ahead of
then,
its time, still attractive, but like still stands out in a way.
yes, definitely. Kind of had like it almost had like a Radio Shack vibe, but not like in not in an insulting way. Oh well. Maybe the PlayStation 2 up to number 3. I think the NES at number 4 sounds right.
This one's rough. I can almost go either way with this. So if you kind of feel a little bit more strongly about the one, I guess I can go with it.
Yeah,
but I think they're both. It's like the NES definitely has like a bit of a classicness to it, but it's weird because we're at this point now where the PlayStation 2 is kind of a classic.
Right, and I think the PlayStation or the NES kind of think defined console design for a really long time, but I think the PlayStation 2 is kind of, you're right, taking over that mantle in the last decade or so, where like that's the system I think of when I think of what does a console look like. So I think this
Right,
is
and it still kind of is the
Microsoft
best
system
looking
made it.
out of all of those modern console designs.
Yes, definitely
Still works.
And yeah, as you predicted, no Microsoft system made the list.
No.
Yep.
Which is funny because I feel like they almost so that other people have a bunch of like people whose job it is to like design the system.
Yeah. Again, I think the Xbox One S is really cool, but that's fine. It didn't make this. I think this is fine. Let's recap for those who are listening. Number 1, GameCube. Number 2, Genesis. PlayStation 2.
Genesis 1.
Genesis 1. Did they really call it the Genesis 1 when it
No,
first
but
came
it's
out?
the Model 1. You know, there's I think they start actually calling Genesis 2 and Genesis 3. So
Yeah.
you know.
PlayStation 2 at number 3, NES at number 4, and then PlayStation 4 rounds out the list at number 5. I feel pretty good about that. I'm glad GameCube won. I think it deserves it. I think it was unfairly maligned at the time and proved itself over the last 15 years or whatever it was.
I do think that like having just nothing but like black and white boxes since then helps it a bit. But
yes, had there been like another system that tried to do something really different, it maybe would have lessened its appeal. But I don't know. For me, not at all. For me, it's just it deserves it.
I love it.
Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up. Like we said, it's a pretty short episode, but I think we that was a pretty good discussion. I like looking at consoles, Mike. I don't know about you.
I always like this kind of stuff. It's fun. Oh
Me
yeah,
too.
you know, it's the things you don't like. People always ask what's the best system, whatever. It's kind of fun to take a look at it at a different angle.
Right, and I think I'm going to go get out my Game Boy Advance SP and apologize to
There
it.
you go.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Mike, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
Sure, I am Tolkoto on Twitter. That's TOLKOTO. I'm always writing at GamesBeat, so be sure to go to GamesBeat.com. And I also do the Exploding Barrel podcast at ebpodcast.com with my brother.
And I'm Jeff Grubb, Poop, Butt, Fart, McFarty's P-Man, CGI Face, Bad Dad on Twitter. That new one at the end, that got me. I'm Jeff Grubb. I'm Jeff Grubb on Twitter. I sometimes make videos on my YouTube page, youtube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. And while I'm gone, you guys can always kind of keep up with me there on Twitter. And also, Mike, you'll have to, mess up someone else's name in the doc when I'm gone. So I apologize. All right, we'll be back next week. We're going to record that right now, but we'll put it up then. You guys can listen in. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.